What is happening in today's, if you look at the enterprise world, and all the organizations, the way the work culture has changed, work from anywhere, work from any device. Majority of the organizations are, following that. So in with that aspect, how the access to the data has changed, how the risk has increased. Maybe not the earlier ones, they would still be there, but in addition to that, one of the new aspects which needs to be considered when we are allowing work from anywhere, work from any device, considering those. So those are some of the aspects which I would talk about, and also talk about what are those scenarios, what are the business impacts, and how are we going to address it, or what should be the approach to address it. You can have always different approaches. I'll just talk about some of them. That's the topic which I want to cover. Okay. So first, the problem statement itself. Data is everywhere, and it could be from access from anywhere, right? So for example, the data is traditionally has been in the enterprise data center, but now with work from anywhere, and also the cloud adoption, whether it's SaaS-based applications like O365 or Salesforce or so on, or its infrastructure as a service like AWS, Azure, GCP. The more and more workloads, more and more applications are moving into the public cloud infrastructure as well. And the third aspect is around consumer productivity or consumer productive tools. Like, somebody wants to take notes, but probably there's nothing on the system, and he wants to do it, all at one go. Probably he could use an Evernote that's readily available, trial, or maybe he can buy his own personal instance and start using Evernote to make notes, and it is available to him everywhere, anywhere, right? So those are also productivity tools, but with that, okay, it helps the user sometimes for his personal purpose. Sometimes he could be using those tools to get his job done within the organization, not intentionally bad. It's unintentional. But by doing all of this, what's happened is data is also going into these kind of apps where probably we do not have any control. Evernote, with customers' personal account, we have no control as an organization. Okay, so those are some of the aspects which which have made the data security, which is what everyone wants as an organization, that my data, my organization data should be secured. Okay. Now, where do we secure them? It has to be not just the enterprise. Wherever the data is, we need to secure it. Now, with that, it could be SaaS, it could be IaaS, it could be data going out to apps which you won't control, your enterprise data center, your devices, all of it, right? So some of the problems, okay, which we can talk about in detail is one, lack of centralized visibility. When you have data spread across all these different areas, the one problem which comes is if it is not centralized, the visibility of all this data. Now that's a problem, because then how would you apply control when you don't even know where my data is, what's the exact location? How can you apply control to it? Okay, so that's one area, and this is very, very prominent when it comes to cloud, especially the SaaS-based applications and infrastructure as a cloud. Okay, now that's from the visibility standpoint. Second is the control. So for example, I was giving an example of infrastructure as service like AWS, Azure. A lot of organizations which I see, they are adopting cloud more from hosting their or moving their on-prem applications into the cloud, because it's very convenient. You don't require any infrastructure. You don't have to maintain anything, right? There's just monthly billing. Consumption model is monthly. There is no upfront cost. There are a lot of benefits of moving into the cloud. So more applications are moving into this public cloud. And by doing that, what if these applications which you're moving are sensitive, or they host sensitive employee information or customer information? That needs to be protected. Okay, so visibility and control becomes very, very important for these kind of critical business applications. Third is visibility and control. What about incident management? Okay, because end of the day, if there is an incident that happens with regards to data exfiltration, for example, or if you see certain attempts, you should be able to first have a visibility to that some DLP violation or incident has happened, and you should be able to investigate that, and you should be able to take the corrective actions. Okay, it could be manual, it could be automated, whatever. Okay, so that's the incident management that also has to centralize. If that is not there, again we are leaving a lot of manual ways to look at different data. The team has to go and correlate the data from different sources and then perform the investigation, which is operationally very challenging or demanding, right? And the fourth one is the potential data exfiltration. When we talk about the cloud, that means it can be accessed from anywhere. You just need the corporate credentials. It could be a device as well, any device of customers, or you employees' personal device as well. Okay, that could be like a personal device accessing the, say, Office 365 or G Drive and working, but by doing that work, what if some sensitive data gets downloaded to that personal device? We don't have any control on the personal device, which means the data is gone, right? So those are certain scenarios which needs to be looked at. Okay, and that is what we are going to talk about, in terms of how are we going to solve those problems. And any questions, from the problem statement itself, right? What has typically happened, in the industry, and what we see is a problem comes, you put a solution to it. Another problem comes, you put a solution to it. Like, for example, endpoint DLP. You have a problem, you add endpoint DLP. You have a SaaS-based solution, okay, or you adopted, say, Office 365 G Suite, you have put Caspi on that. Web proxy, if you feel that that there are exfiltration attempts happening to applications which you don't control and you want to control it, and if you don't have endpoint DLP, you put web gateway and try to control what users can access. And if something which is allowed to be accessed, how do you put control so that they can't upload anything over there? So web gateway comes into picture. If it's infrastructure as a service, you take a CNAP solution. So that's the industry buzzword, to be very honest. But end of the day, CNAP is nothing but providing the security for public cloud infrastructure, including data protection, right? If we do that, okay, and if at different point in time we are taking different solutions. Now the problem with that approach is it is fragmented approach, which means that the solution, the problem statements I talked about, centralized visibility, centralized incident management doesn't come. That means you don't have centralized control as well, which means if you're doing it in bits and pieces, in different consoles, different solutions, there are potential gaps which you may leave, which could be exploited by intentional employees who wants to exfiltrate data, or unintentional users also, including the bad actors. Everything is possible, right? So we should be looking at an approach which is as much centralized as possible, right? So with that, so some of the negative consequences of this fragmented approach could be technology sprawl, because you have many technologies working together. They're siloed. Okay, there are no end-to-end visibility. Multiple policy management. That means if you're creating, say, a DLP policy on endpoint, you have to create the same policy on the Caspi. You have to create the same policy for infrastructure as a service. You have to create a same policy for the web proxy. If they're from different solutions, that's a problem. For one policy change, you have to do it at 4 different places, right? And then that all results into agility. The agility becomes very, very, I would say very difficult to achieve the agility, because business today want to onboard new applications, onboard new customer, or solve new business use cases for their own customers, for their own employees at a very, very quick pace. That's the whole reason of adopting the cloud. But because of all these challenges, if we are not able to allow the business to continuously grow and at the same time secure, and that's the I would say a problem area which needs to be addressed, right? So let's look at the approach. Okay, now the approach, what I suggest, I also discuss with many customers, and the approach should be that what if you can combine most of it from centralization perspective. So what if the solution which you would look at can do the can give you the web control, which is from a data protection perspective, web DLP, from a device perspective, enterprise DLP or host DLP, from applications which you do not control, any kind of web upload happening, control that. What users are going and accessing, are there risky cloud applications which they're going to access? Get a visibility to that. Applications like O365 or ServiceNow or Salesforce, all these enterprise grade apps, or even the smaller ones like Jira or Cisco WebEx or Zoom or Citrix file share, so on. Control them, have the right controls around them from a CASB perspective, and cover the infrastructure as a service as well from the same console, so that you know if there is any misconfiguration resulting into a data exfiltration, you should be aware of that. Or if there are custom applications which are hosting sensitive information, they should not be misconfigured because there could be a potential data exfiltration gap over there. Or identify, if there are any sensitive information lying into a custom app which is not supposed to host it, right? All those kind of scenarios can be addressed from one single management console. Nothing like that's the ultimate goal. I see that would help organizations to streamline things, or move away from the siloed approach or the fragmented approach into a unification or unified approach, right? So you also see a couple of terms here, SASE and CNAP. So if you go and read a lot of articles on the internet, and also follow Gartner, for example, you'll see SASE as a term which is used. Okay, now SASE is nothing but it's a framework. It's not one point solution. It's a framework where the two different concepts merge together. One is network as a service, and second is network security as a service. Okay, both of them are merging, and if we are allowing or we are adopting a framework where we are converging these and doing centralization as much as possible to achieve different scenarios, different use cases, that's what SASE defines. There are many solutions which are part of SASE, and there are many verticals in SASE which needs to be addressed. But that's the topics which I talked about, device related controls, the web, the CASB, a SaaS specifically, all that is part of SASE. Okay, there are multiple other things which are part of SASE. I'm just talking about what's there on the slide. Okay, and CNAP is again another term which you may find is a cloud native application protection platform, which is nothing but anything related to public cloud infrastructure, whether it is workload security, whether it is container security, whether it is around misconfiguration, drift detection, remediation of drift detection. All of that is a part of CNAP. Okay, so these are some of the terms you'll hear whenever you talk to different I would say vendors, or you talk to Gartner, you will come across these terms, right? So as much centralization as possible from one console, nothing like that. Right? So let me talk about section by section. I would quickly go through them. So device, for example. Okay, now when it comes to device or enterprise infrastructure, okay, so let's talk about the device or local control on the device. Endpoint DLP, I'm sure everyone is aware, because this is not a new technology, it's already there. So any data that is there on the endpoint, and if it is getting exfiltrated from the endpoint, that should be a control. You should have good control over that. That's one. And second is the network DLP. So if you have applications which are or file servers which are hosting critical information or applications hosted on-prem which host critical information, you should be able to address that. Again, this is not new. This has been there for a long time. Okay, and some of the controls for endpoint security are these, like encryption you can use to prevent, data loss prevention for the endpoint itself, or hard disk based recovery or data exfiltration from the hard disk. USB, CD, DVD, location based protection, which is like sensitive data coming from an application or maybe on a file share, all of that. Protection of data that is going into the cloud, sensitive data going into the cloud, or print or copy or print screen from the endpoint itself, is covered by the endpoint. And similarly, if there are file servers posted, and you should be able to discover sensitive file over there and apply the controls. If they are moving out of the file server, going out to the internet or to unauthorized people, it should be detected, as part of the network PLP as well. So these are not new. So I'm not spending a time on this. If you have any questions, do let me know. But where I want to spend a little bit more time are the new threat vectors in the cloud. So that's where I would like to spend a little bit more time. Right. So let's move on to the section number 2, which is around web and unsanctioned or personal SaaS. Now, the term unsanctioned I use for those applications which is not in your control. You do not control them. You do not own them. Say, for example, Evernote. I gave an example. Evernote is something which you do not control. For example, you don't have an enterprise license, or for that matter, even say G Drive. You have a Office 365 account for your organization, but you don't have a G Drive account. What if a user is using his own card and getting one account provision for G Drive and using that to sync data, upload data, so on and so forth, right? And that's a personal instance. Why would organization specific sensitive data go into a personal drive? It should not, right? So those kind of applications I call as unsanctioned cloud apps. Okay, so let's look at now from the that aspect. So one, forward proxy, SWG, is nothing but secure web gateway or forward proxy. That could be used to block access to unauthorized applications or risky applications, isolate sites, which is where the browser isolation scenario comes into play, or do a tenant restriction. Okay, tenant restriction, I'll talk about it in a while because that's an important aspect. Okay, and the second aspect is the upload itself. Like if somebody is uploading sensitive content to an application which is unsanctioned, that should be taken care of because that could lead to data exfiltration, right? So let's look at a couple of examples here. Okay, now what I show on the screen here is a cloud governance model derived from visibility perspective. Now, for example, if the tool can give you visibility that who are the users across all your employee base, okay, whether they are on-prem, they're off-prem, wherever they are working from, you ensure that they go via, if they have to access internet, and if they're using the managed device, your company provided device or devices which you consider managed, if they're using those devices, you control the internet access, which means you have a forward proxy for them. It could be cloud-based, it could be on-prem, either ways. All that data can be consumed to provide you the visibility. Now, what visibility I'm talking about? Because proxy is already taking care of allowing or denying applications based on say category, cloud-based category should not be allowed or should be allowed with a couple of exceptions, so on and so forth. Okay, but what I'm talking about is in addition to what proxy is doing. So proxy is doing the category-based filtering. Good, great. That's required. But what if user is going and accessing, say, for example, SourceForge? Now, SourceForge is a category that would come under maybe development or cloud storage or collaboration, any one of them. It's a good app. It has got a good reputation score. Everything is good. But from a data risk perspective, is that good? Probably no. Depending on your organization's risk appetite, It may be good, it may be, you know, average, or it may be bad also, because any data that goes into Sourceforce, for example, they own it, which means as per the EULA, which you accept, maybe knowing or unknowingly, any data that goes there, they own it. That means if that data gets shared, you can't go back and tell Sourceforce that, you know, you have shared that sensitive data which I uploaded there. You can't do that because they own it as per the EULA. That's a risky behavior, a risky thing to do. What if a user, an employee, uploads something which is sensitive to a Sourceforce to do certain work, and it gets shared by somebody? Or, for example, you know, tomorrow the service Sourceforce itself gets breached. They don't have data encryption at rest, for example, which means at a common place, all the data is stored. If hacker is able to, or a bad actor is able to get through, he is going to take everything from there, including your organization sensitive data, which was unintentionally gone there. Now, so that means it's not just about, you know, allowing and denying a category. It's also about whether this cloud application is risky or not from a data perspective, data risk perspective, from a compliance risk perspective. If you're adhering to, say, GDPR, or you're applying to, you know, adhering to some other compliance or PCI, is it safe, you know, this particular application from those angles? Or is this application, does this application have all the right controls? Do they go via regular penetration testing, regular audits, so on and so forth? So there are different risk parameters, you know, which typically it's also called shadow IT in cloud term, or shadow app usage. So this gives you the visibility from a risk perspective, and the risk could be, you know, 50 or 55 or 60 different risk attributes, which helps you to identify whether this application is good or bad. Okay, it should be allowed or not allowed. Now, from that angle, once you get the data in the dashboard that these are all the applications that are there, these are high risk, these are medium risk, so on and so forth, then as part of your governance framework for the cloud, you can segregate them. Okay, these are some of the sanctioned applications where we have licenses for them, like Workplace or ServiceNow or Office 365. We have licenses for them, and we have, you know, good controls because we own them. We can control everything over there. Okay, great. So let them be sanctioned services and let them allow free services like GitHub free account, or Gmail free account, or Dropbox free account. Okay, now you can say, okay, these are good utility tools for the users. Let them use it because I tolerate them as an organization. Yeah, they are a little bit risky, but I'm okay with that. So you can say, okay, these set of applications going to tolerate it, unsanctioned cloud applications. But these set of applications like ZippyShare or a PDF mode, Sourceforce, they are high risk because there are chances of data exfiltration or data going out by different means. You know, attacker getting it, or, you know, somebody else is sharing it. Those are high risk applications from a data risk perspective. Let me not allow them for the organization, right? So those should not be allowed, and you put, you know, restrictions around it. That if users are going and accessing all these kind of applications, block their access. Do not allow them access. Or you can say, for a tolerated unsanctioned application, allow them to access. But if they're trying to upload something sensitive into tolerated unsanctioned applications, do not allow that sensitive data upload happening. But rest everything, let them browse, let them download, do whatever they want, but no uploads of sensitive information, right? So those are the kind of controls or governance framework you can design for the organization. This helps you in a longer term to reduce the risky applications being accessed by the employees from their devices. Okay, the less the number of risky applications, the less the potential of data exploitation. Right, so that's how you can create a data governance framework using, you know, the visibility of data which is coming. This is one example. Like, you know, sanctioned services, you put them into one category. They could be, you know, some set of applications falling into that bucket. Then tolerated unsanctioned applications, high risk restricted applications. You can have different grouping or buckets for all of those. Okay, and take corrective actions accordingly. And all of this could be automated. This is not manual. This all could be automated. That's also one of the key areas to be looked at: automation. Because the more the automation, you know, less the amount of operational overhead. for your team, and the team can spend that time to do something more productive, more creative, self-learning or whatever. Okay. Now, the second aspect which I want to talk about, that was around governance. Now, second is which I was also talking about, like sensitive data uploaded to unsanctioned cloud applications or web, like accidental data upload, or it could be an insider a person who's intentionally going and uploading data to these kind of applications. Do you have visibility? What has he went ahead and uploaded something? Where has he uploaded? Was that risky or not? All that kind of visibility you can get and apply the controls accordingly, right? Similarly, are they going ahead and accessing a cloud application which has poor reputation, and they are downloading say infected file, potential infected file from there? You should be able to control all of that. So all that falls into, I would say, shadow service related use cases or scenarios which should be addressed. Okay. And as I said, this is for users across, okay, not just Office, outside Office as well, or from other devices also. Second scenario is corporate versus personal. Now, taking, say, Office 365 or G Drive as an example. Why I take that example? Because Office 365 G Suite are most widely accepted or deployed solution today, right? Now, if user is going from his managed device and accessing the corporate Office 365 tenant using his corporate credentials, that is good, because it's a corporate device, one, and it's a corporate application. So that's all fine. But what if user tries to go and access a personal Office 365 tenant? I'll take an example. So he has created an account in Office 365, maybe one or two user, and he is trying to access that. Should that be allowed as per the organization? No, it should not be, because it's a managed device. That means it may have sensitive information over there. What if he uploads that information to his personal Office 365 OneDrive instance? That's a risk. So as part of remediation to the solution, we should be able to identify personal tenant versus corporate tenant and allow access to corporate tenant, deny access to personal tenant from the corporate managed device. Okay, that's a very, very important use case to address. Okay, the URL remains common, but most of these cloud applications, especially the enterprise ones, okay, they have created an API which could be leveraged to identify corporate versus personal. Okay. Now, for example, Office 365. Office 365 has published an API which helps to identify the request that is coming from. Is it coming from a specific subscription ID? If it is coming from a specific subscription ID, then it will be considered as managed. If it is not coming from that specific subscription ID, it will be considered as unmanaged or personal, I would say. So that is leveraged by the solution to identify. Basically, what is done on the solution is you create a whitelist. You say, okay, these 3 or 4 tenants with these subscription IDs are my corporate application or business allowed Office 365 tenant. When I say business allowed, there are scenarios, where not just your Office 365 tenant, but as part of some project, for example, you could be allowing customers or some of your own customers Office 365 tenant also, because some of the employees could be working on that. Now those could be business allowed applications. Okay, so if there are O365, there would be a subscription ID. Take those subscription IDs, put them into the whitelist. So these 3 or 4 applications, Office 365 tenants, they will be whitelisted, which means they will be allowed, but anything outside of this would not be allowed. Now, those will be treated as personal. Okay, that's a way to identify corporate versus personal. Same thing happens for G Drive, same thing happens for G Suite or Dropbox or Box, or AWS. Okay, now let me cover the sanctioned application. Okay, now this is where a lot of different ways of data, I would say, exfiltration or data sharing instances happen. Okay, so for example, sanctioned SaaS, which is where the CASB plays an important role. Okay, enable file sharing between authorized parties. Okay, That is something which you should have visibility. Prevent collaboration of unapproved third parties. Okay, which is like if I'm a user and I'm trying to share it with a third party person, it should be addressed. Block access, upload or download from a personal device from a sanctioned application, that should be taken care of. From an email perspective, you should be able to detect that this particular sensitive document is being shared with a unauthorized recipient, that should be taken care of. Or you should not be able to share with unapproved third-party applications at all. All those are part of the use case. Let's dig deeper into the use cases. Okay, that was a high level. Now, let's say, for example, this is your corporate environment and this is your sanctioned SaaS application. Okay, now I'll take Office 365 as an example. Now, Office 365 is one of the most adopted collaboration SaaS application. So sensitive data is, as an organization, I'm partnering with 10 other partners. We are collaborating. That means I'm probably sharing a folder and sharing data as part of that. Some files uploaded into that shared folder and they're accessed. Or I am taking a file and creating a link of that and sharing that link with the other third-party business person. But what if I do that for an unauthorized person? Maybe say, for example, my own personal account. I go ahead, create a link of the file and copy that link and put that into the email and send it to my personal account. Or take that link and send it to my friend who could be using some other account, send it to him or tell him over the phone that this is the link. Why don't you go ahead and access it? You will be able to access the document. Done. That could lead to data exfiltration. It's a good functionality, very, very widely used, but it could be misused also, which means sensitive data could be shared by this collaboration link itself. So what I'm talking about, the collaboration is a link share. Okay, not because this is only a link. It is not the file that is going, which means the email. Okay, if it is going via email as a link, it can't be detected because there's no file. It's just a link. If you're sending, telling the person on the other side over phone, there's nothing you can do about it because there's no file involvement here, right? So in these scenarios, okay, what needs to be done is identify that if there is a link sharing, first identify if there's a link sharing happening. If link sharing is happening, is it happening to an unauthorized person, okay, which the corporate does not allow? If that is the case, do not allow to happen. Okay, that is one way to look at it. Okay, any collaboration, file-based or folder-based collaboration happening to an unauthorized recipient, which organization doesn't allow, block it. Okay, great. But that also, puts a lot of restrictions, saying that if you are collaborating with, say, your business partner who is working on, say, Gmail, they use Gmail. You're collaborating with two of those colleagues. Okay, you can't just block the domain because you want to collaborate only with two individuals in that organization. But what about the rest? What if the third person is my friend and I want to exfiltrate data? Because it is allowed for those two people, I can very well share with the third person who's not authorized. What do you do? So you can actually, you should be able to create policies such that if a link sharing is happening to these two individuals, allow it. If it is happening to this third individual, link sharing from the same domain, same company, it should not be allowed. Okay, that's one aspect, which we minutely look at, because this is the scenario which I see a lot. Second is you do not want to put restrictions saying that, okay, when the link sharing is happening to these two individuals, allow it based on domain. You want to say, okay, let them get all the data collaboration happening between my employee and those two users. Let that happen anytime. I don't care. But if they are sharing my organization very sensitive PII data with that organization, those two individuals, I do not want that to happen. Now we are bringing in context, content, okay, DLP aware policy or DLP aware collaboration policy, which means you're allowing the collaboration to happen with those two individuals, but you are not allowing PII or sensitive data to go to those two employees who are allowed by business, okay, but not the PII data. That's the kind of scenario which should be looked at, okay, because these are very corner cases. But if this scenario comes and data exfiltration happens, data exfiltration is exfiltration, okay, so it doesn't matter then, okay. So that should be addressed, okay. That's a very cloud native way, or cloud native data exfiltration scenario which needs to be addressed, okay. Email DLP is another example wherein, okay, but that is not new, that is quite old, but the approach could be a cloud native approach. Now, typically what happens, okay, before I go to email, all this collaboration I'm talking about is happening from cloud to cloud, okay, which means that API, which is application programming interface API, is the best way to identify and control this kind of exfiltrations because it's happening cloud to cloud. So the solution should be able to connect with your sanction application, which is say O365, via the API and get a visibility of who is doing what, from where, okay, which device type, which location, all that visibility you should get. And if they are trying to send or exfiltrate data via this means, okay, via link sharing to an unauthorized person, PII data, that should not be gone. That should not go. It should be prevented. That happens via the API. API is agentless because there's no requirement of agent, and and it does not sit in line. That means it is not between the user and the application. It sits outside, out of band, not between the user and the application. Okay, it is out of band. Okay, so that's very important. API is one of the most adopted cloud native ways of addressing these problems. Second scenario is third-party connected applications. Okay, now for example, I'm using Office 365. Now, when I'm using my Teams application for chatting or collaboration, I could get a file from somebody, maybe internal employee or somebody. I get a file, but I don't have the right tools on my system to open that file. What do? I can immediately go to Microsoft, the software store, and get the right application to open it. I have done that. I'm the user. I'm authorizing it. It asks for permission. It wants read access. It wants write access. XYZ. You, as a user, we don't even bother what permissions are there. Accept. I have accepted that, and I'm able to open my document. But you know what I have done? I have allowed a third-party application. I do not know if it's risky or not. I have not even carefully read what kind of permissions it has asked, which means what if I use an application which somebody has already exploited and it has asked for a right permission, which means as a user, I have given access to my Office 365 tenant, the corporate tenant, that read access to my OneDrive, which means he can do whatever he wants. He can land, expand, and then exfiltrate. Okay, so that's a very risky behavior. So as an organization, because it's a sanctioned application, I have the administrative controls. As part of the solution, I should be able to first get a visibility as an organization that who are the users who are allowing these third-party applications to connect to my Office 365. What is the risk of those third-party applications? What are the permissions that those third-party applications are requesting? Once I have that visibility, I can also define a policy that, okay, if any application is connecting, if it has high risk, block its access or revoke the access for that particular user. If it is asking for a right permission, do not allow. But that is my organization policy. If it has to be done, go ahead through the change management process, get the approval, and then we'll allow it, right? So this becomes again a second scenario, which is very cloud native, allowing third-party applications to connect to your Office 365 tenant, and that which could lead to data exfiltration. Okay, so this is again very cloud native, and it has to be done only via API. Okay, this is API based use case, which cannot be addressed by any other mode, not by a forward proxy, not by a reverse proxy, not by any other means. It is only via the API, which you can address. Okay, I'll move on then. The next one is around same sanction application, but now we are considering a scenario where the data is getting downloaded to a personal device, because as an organization, I'm allowing users to work from their own device also, okay, as part of the work from home or work from anywhere culture. But if I allow that, they can use the corporate credentials to log into Office 365 G Drive, they can start working. But what if they download content, sensitive content? So I need to have control to detect any kind of downloads happening, okay, and prevent that from happening. Or I want to be a little more flexible as an organization. I can say, okay, let users download as part of their work from the Office 365, from their OneDrive or SharePoint side. But if they try to download anything sensitive, which is corporate PII data, if they're trying to download, do not allow them that to happen, because that will lead to data exfiltration. So any file download will be allowed. Any file with PII data, not allowed, block. Okay, so that way you're taking care of the sensitive information going out to a personal device. Okay? Another scenario, which is like probably an extension to this, is what if there are some executive users who want to who are working from a personal device, but they on a day-to-day basis they are managing personal very sensitive information also. Now that's a risky behavior, and you can't say no to business also, because sometimes it's really required, and those are the situations are such. Now what you can also do, if as an organization we have adopted, say, DRM solution, which is document protection, like maybe Seclor or Microsoft AIP or Ionic, so on. You can integrate that solution with the CASB solution, so that whenever the executive user is coming from an unmanaged device, that gets detected that he's coming from an unmanaged device. If he's trying to download a file that has sensitive information, on the fly, the DRM policy should get applied to that document. Which means the executive, because he's an authorized user, he will be able to access the document, download the document, but it is document that document is DRM protected, which means if he tries to share that document to somebody else, they are not authorized by the DRM policy, which means they can't access it. So we are restricting the usage of the document only to that particular user, because we are authorized to do it, right? So that's an extension to the same scenario. Okay, and how this should be achieved, a true unmanaged device detection and these controls, is via reverse proxy, because this will never work for a proxy, because you can never have an agent or a DLP on a personal device, which means you need to have a reverse proxy deployed so that any access to the corporate sanction app that is happening should happen via the reverse proxy, so that you can control it. Now, again, reverse proxy is agentless. It does not require any agents on the endpoint, because you use SAML-based redirection to automatically redirect the user's session to the sanctioned application. Okay, so SAML-based redirection is used to achieve this scenario and apply control to true unmanaged devices. Okay. So moving on, okay, from the sanctioned SaaS application to the infrastructure as a service. Okay, now from an infrastructure as a service perspective, one is very common is misconfiguration audit. Okay, great. I'm not touching upon the misconfiguration part, because I'm trying to keep data security in the center, and then talking about all these use cases which we have discussed till now. Now, in infrastructure as a service, okay, say for example, you have your own custom application hosted there, and that custom application hosts a lot of sensitive information. Okay, now if the data is residing, for example, in an S3 bucket, or in an Azure blob, or in Google Cloud Storage, for example, as a backend to the application. Okay, now these storages are not attached storage, which means your regular DLP solution cannot address this, doesn't have accessibility to it. Okay, which means you need to rely on an API-based approach to identify if there is any sensitive data residing in these kind of storage buckets. That is one. Okay, identify the sensitive information. If the custom application should not be hosting sensitive data, but some user from the front end to the application has uploaded something sensitive in there. That's something which the solution can do a scan, DLP scan into that S3 bucket or Azure blob and identify whether if this is sensitive, it should be reported. If it is sensitive, not just report, also do a quarantine action for it. Okay, so that can be done. Second aspect of this is associated with the misconfiguration also. Like for example, as part of my AWS or Azure infrastructure, I have it's so dynamic in nature that every time there's a new VM, there are associated resources like load balancers or NAT gateways, public IP addresses, security groups, all gets created manually or via automation, like automation templates like CloudFormation templates or Terraform or Azure ARM. There are many. Okay, now it's very, very dynamic in nature, which means that the best practices which I have deployed today may not be the same for 4 days down the line, because I may have added another application which had integration with this application which you hosted. Now, by means of that integration, you would have changed certain security groups to allow access, which means what if it has been done incorrectly? That could lead to misconfiguration, which means this is also called a configuration drift. The configuration was good, but now it has drifted to one or two misconfigurations. Okay, it keeps on happening. So one, the solution should be able to identify any kind of misconfigurations to new resources or existing resources. That should be identified, and there should be recommendations that what can be done to address this remediation, this misconfiguration. That's one. Okay. Second is, what if there is a S3 bucket or Azure blob or Google Cloud Storage, which is part of the my critical project, and it is misconfigured. It is misconfigured such that it gives it a publicly writable access. That's a big misconfiguration, because if it has sensitive information and if it is publicly writable, that's the green signal for a hacker or attacker to come in and exfiltrate the data. Okay, so the tool should be able to give you that misconfiguration, whether this S3 bucket is misconfigured or not, or Azure blob. If it is misconfigured, why don't we go ahead and do an automatic DLP scan saying, okay, if it is misconfigured, do I have any sensitive data in there? If yes, that's the highest priority to remediate. If no, maybe I'll address it a little later. Let me address the first one, which has sensitive information and it is misconfigured, right? So those are the scenarios which are very, very cloud native and infrastructure as a service relevant. Okay, so we need to address that kind of problems as well. Okay, as part of the public cloud infrastructure security. Okay, there are others also. I'm not talking about them. There are misconfigurations, vulnerability scan, workload security, so on and so forth. Not covering that. I just wanted to keep this discussion from a data perspective. Okay, so from a overall unification perspective, solution, McAfee solution can do all of this from one single management console. Okay, which means your management, visibility and control for shadow ID, visibility and control of tenant restriction, web uploads, all of that is happening from the same console. Endpoint DLP related incidents are again visible in the same console. That means you are getting the endpoint DLP incidents, you are getting the web DLP incidents, you're getting the shadow ID related DLP incidents, sanction applications related DLP incidents, all those scenarios which we talked about. The infrastructure as a service, cloud storage buckets, misconfiguration and data stored in them, those kind of incidents, all of that is happening from one single console. Now that addresses a big gap, because now you have a centralized visibility of your data, no matter whether it's on the endpoint, whether it is in the cloud, or whether somebody is accessing an unsanctioned cloud application and doing something. So you have complete visibility to cover wherever your data resides and its data movement. Okay, That's the whole intent, keeping data at center, and then designing these controls all around it. Okay, so what are the positive outcomes which we should get out of this is complete visibility and control of data which is spread across SaaS, IaaS, enterprise, all of that. With API based approach, if you go ahead and deploy, if majority of the use cases could be achieved by API, the benefit is it is agentless. If a lot of use cases could be achieved via reverse proxy, it is again agentless. The email DLP that can be achieved in the cloud native way, which does not require any agents on the endpoint. That means it is device independent. All these technologies will be device independent, which means even if it's like an environment of 10,000 or 20,000 or 30,000 or 1 lakh, doesn't matter. You would be able to deploy the solution and operationalize the solution within a week or month. Okay, and then probably you can look at those use cases which are say agent dependent. Then you can start deploying the agents and then address those specific scenarios. Okay, so that way you can quickly get an ROI from the solution if we follow a structured phase-wise approach. First non-agent based solution, and then the agent based. That will help you to reduce the overall time to deploy and getting the ROI. Okay, plus it helps you to reduce the complexity, like a common DLP engine, which means you create a classification once. Okay, like what is important to you, you create that classification once and then use it for endpoint, use it for SaaS or sanctioned app, use it for web DLP, you use it everywhere. Okay, so that's the benefit of using a one common DLP engine across. Okay, SaaS, IaaS, PaaS, endpoint, all of it. Real-time control, whether if the data is moving from cloud to cloud or from device to cloud or cloud to device data download, all of that. Okay, plus from a McAfee perspective, we have added like quite a couple of innovative features as well, like a SOC dashboard has been added so that SOC team can look at all these incident information from one single console, which is mapped to MITRE attack framework for the cloud, so that as per the MITRE TTPs, where do we stand? Is there something which is already happening, or it has already happened and it is in the last stage? And you get all of that visibility from a MITRE dashboard, and you can use that for your investigation. It could be a starting point for you. Similarly, a maturity dashboard is also part of the solution, which means it gives you self-recommendations based on the data that is getting collected across these SaaS, IaaS, PaaS, Shadow IT, and all of that. It starts giving you recommendation. Where do you stand from a visibility and control perspective against your peers in the industry? And if your score is less for visibility, for control, what are the recommendations which you can adopt? What you can do? So it tells you that this 2 steps of these 3 policies you can create to improve your risk score, okay, or have a better cloud governance model for your organization. So it's an advisory dashboard which helps you. You don't need to contact somebody. The tool itself gives you all of that to improve upon those skills. Those are some of the innovative things which are part of McAfee solution.